The courtroom stretched wider than any building on Earth. Sarah Chen stood in the center, surrounded by beings that looked like nightmares and dreams mixed together. Some had wings, others had scales or crystals growing from their skin, a few floated in tanks of colored liquid. All of them stared at her with eyes that burned with anger. She wore the gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but the guards had taken her weapons and insignia. Her hands were bound with energy cuffs that hummed softly. The chains felt cold, even though they were made of light. Above her, the High Arbiter Kellen sat on a throne of twisted metal. His 6 arms moved constantly, each one holding a different tool of judgment. His insect face showed no emotion, but his clicking voice filled the massive chamber. "Commander Sarah Chen of the species called humans," Kellen announced. "You stand accused of the greatest crime known to civilized beings. Genocide. The murder of 7 billion Vexari souls. An entire world turned to ash." Sarah lifted her chin. "I didn't do it." Laughter rippled through the courtroom. It sounded like breaking glass and distant thunder mixed together. The representatives from 200 different worlds found her denial amusing. "The evidence speaks otherwise," Kellen said. One of his arms gestured, and holographic images filled the air. Sarah saw a planet burning. She saw cities melting. She saw bodies floating in space, frozen and twisted. Her stomach turned. Human weapon signatures were detected across the entire planet. Kellen continued. "Your ship was tracked, entering the system. You were found in orbit when our peacekeepers arrived. The Vexari survivors identified a human craft in their final transmissions. I was responding to a distress call," Sarah said. Her voice stayed steady, but inside she felt panic rising. "Someone asked for help. I jumped to the coordinates and found the planet already dying." "Convenient," said a voice from the jury box. Sarah turned to see a being made of floating crystals. Each piece reflected light in different colors. The murderer returns to the scene and claims innocence. That was Zeke's, her assigned defender. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to explain that she remembered arriving at the planet and seeing the destruction. She remembered trying to scan for survivors. But then, her memories turned foggy. There was a gap of several hours. When her mind cleared again, she was in a cell on this station, with everyone telling her she had killed billions. "The defendant appears confused," another judge observed. This one looked like a jellyfish made of smoke. Perhaps the guilt weighs heavily on her primitive mind. "Humans are new to the Concordat," Kellen said. "Only 70 years since first contact. They brought violence with them. Wars. Weapons. Aggression. We should have known they would turn their destructive nature on peaceful species." Ambassador Torres sat in the human delegation section. He was an older man, with white hair and tired eyes. Sarah caught his gaze, silently begging him to help. Torres looked away. The political situation was impossible. Earth needed the Concordat. Humanity was still learning faster than light travel. They needed alien trade and technology. If the Concordat expelled Earth or declared humans enemies, it would set humanity back centuries. Torres had orders from Earth's government to distance himself from Sarah, if necessary. She was alone. "We will now hear testimony from the survivors," Kellen said. A Vexari was brought forward. The species looked like tall birds, with 4 arms and feathers that changed color with their emotions. This one's feathers were black with grief. Its name was Kresh, and it had lost everything. "I was in the southern continent when the attack began," Kresh said. Its voice trembled. "Fire fell from the sky. Not normal fire. Human plasma weapons. They burned through our shields like they were nothing. I watched my family die. My children burned in front of me." Kresh pointed at Sarah with one trembling arm. "I saw the ship. It had Earth markings. It fired and fired until nothing was left alive." Sarah felt sick. The testimony was real. The pain was real. But she didn't do this. She couldn't have done this. "I'm sorry for your loss." Sarah said quietly. "But I didn't attack your world. Someone is lying. Someone wants you to think humans did this." "More lies," Kellen clicked. "Typical human deception." The trial continued for hours. More evidence appeared. Weapon logs from her ship showed firing patterns that matched the destruction. Navigation records showed her ship had been in orbit for 16 hours, plenty of time to destroy a planet. Chemical traces on her hull matched the Vexari atmosphere. Everything pointed to her guilt. Zeke's presented a weak defense. The crystalline being argued that perhaps Sarah had been under mental control, or that her ship had been stolen. But there was no evidence of either. The Concordate's telepathic scanners had examined Sarah's mind and found only chaos. Human thoughts were too complex and strange for most telepaths to read clearly. The judges interpreted this as evidence of deception. "A clear mind has nothing to hide," one judge said. "The human mind is clouded and twisted. This reveals guilt, or it reveals that you don't understand humans," Sarah shot back. "We think differently. That doesn't make us liars." "Silence," Kellen ordered. "You will speak only when asked questions." The sun that lit the station began to set, visible through the transparent dome of the courtroom. Artificial lights activated, casting strange shadows across the gathered species. Sarah's legs ached from standing. Her throat was dry. She had been given no water or food since the trial began. Different species had different needs, and the Concordat apparently didn't consider human comfort important for a genocide trial. "We will now deliberate," Kellen announced. "The evidence is overwhelming. The guilt is clear. We shall determine the appropriate punishment." The judges began to confer in a language that sounded like music played backward. Sarah couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. They were deciding how to execute her. Torres finally stood. "High Arbiter, I request mercy for the defendant. Earth does not condone her actions. We ask that she be imprisoned rather than executed. Allow us to take responsibility for our citizen." "You wish to harbor a genocidal killer?" Kellen asked. "We wish to prove that humanity can police itself," Torres said carefully. It was a political move. Torres was trying to salvage Earth's relationship with the Concordat. He would take Sarah back to Earth where she would spend life in prison. Earth would appear responsible. The Concordat would be satisfied. Sarah felt betrayed, but she understood. Torres was trying to save humanity's future, even if it meant sacrificing her. Trim rested, Lonication. Before Kellen could respond, something changed in the courtroom. The air pressure shifted. Sarah's ears popped. A deep vibration ran through the floor, felt more than heard. Several species looked around in confusion. Others showed alarm. "What is that?" someone asked. The vibration grew stronger. The lights flickered. And then, from beneath the courtroom floor, something began to rise. It was a pillar, black as space itself. It pushed up through the metal floor like a plant growing at incredible speed. The surface was covered in symbols that glowed with pale blue light. The pillar rose higher and higher until it reached the dome ceiling 20 meters above. Chaos erupted. Some species fled their seats. Others activated defensive shields. The guards surrounding Sarah raised their weapons, but didn't know where to aim. Kellen's 6 arms waved frantically. The pillar stopped growing. The symbols on its surface pulsed faster, and then a beam of light shot out from the top, sweeping across the entire courtroom like a searchlight. The beam passed over judges and jury. It passed over the human delegation. It passed over the Vexari survivors. Each time, the light turned green for a moment, then moved on. When the beam reached Sarah, everything stopped. The light turned red, then purple, then colors Sarah had no names for. The pillar began to hum, a sound that resonated in her bones. The symbols flashed faster and faster. Sarah felt something touch her mind, not like the rough telepathic scans from earlier. This was deeper, older. It felt like being read by the universe itself. Images flashed through her thoughts. She saw worlds she had never visited. She saw beings from species that no longer existed. She saw wars fought before Earth had even formed. The weight of ages pressed down on her consciousness. Then the pillar projected a hologram. Above Sarah's head, floating in the air where everyone could see, appeared a symbol. It was complex, made of interlocking circles and geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. The symbol rotated slowly, casting strange shadows. The symbol began to broadcast. Sarah heard it transmit on every frequency, saw it appear on every screen in the courtroom. Whatever the pillar was doing, it wanted everyone to see. Kellen stared at the symbol. His mandibles clicked rapidly. "What is that? What does it mean?" No one answered. The species of the Concordat looked at each other in confusion and fear. Zeke's floated closer, her crystalline body chiming softly. "That's an ancient marker," she said slowly. "From the predecessor civilization. I've seen fragments in archaeological texts, but I don't know what it means." The pillar continued to hum. The symbol continued to broadcast, and Sarah stood at the center of it all, marked by something older than any living species could remember. "The trial is postponed," Kellen finally said. His voice had lost its certainty. "We must understand what this artifact is trying to tell us. Guards, take the human to secure holding. No one touches that pillar until we have answers." As guards approached to lead her away, Sarah looked up at the glowing symbol above her head. She didn't know what it meant either. But something had changed. The artifact had reacted to her, specifically, and whatever it was trying to say, the Concordat was now forced to listen. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the pillar remained. It stood like a judge of its own, ancient and patient, and the symbol continued to glow above where Sarah had stood, visible to anyone who entered the chamber. Something old had awakened, and Sarah Chen was at the center of a mystery 10,000 years in the making. The holding cell was small and cold. Sarah sat on a metal bench that was designed for a species with a different body shape. Everything hurt. Through the transparent wall, she could see guards standing watch. They kept their distance from the cell, as if she might explode. 3 days had passed since the pillar appeared. 3 days of scientists and archaeologists flooding into the courtroom to study the artifact. 3 days of the symbol broadcasting across every Concordat channel, visible on screens and displays throughout the galaxy. No one knew what it meant. That terrified them. Zeke's visited on the 4th day, the crystalline being floated through the security barrier, her pieces chiming softly as she moved. She carried several data tablets under what might have been an arm. "I've been researching," Zeke said without greeting. "Day and night. The archives of 17 different civilizations. Everything we have on the predecessors." "The who?" Sarah asked. Her voice was rough from not speaking. "The civilization that built this station," Zeke's explained. 10,000 years ago. Maybe longer. They were incredibly advanced. They built structures all over the galaxy. Then they vanished. No one knows where they went or why. Sarah stood up and walked to the transparent wall. "And that pillar thing is theirs?" "Yes. It was buried beneath the courtroom. Our scans never detected it because the technology is too advanced. It must have been waiting there the whole time. Dormant." Zeke's crystals flickered with colors that might have been excitement or fear. "It activated when you entered the room." "Why me?" "That's what I'm trying to understand." Zeke's arranged her tablets in the air, each one displaying different information. "I found fragments of text, ancient languages that took our best translators centuries to partially decode. They mentioned something called keepers." Sarah felt a chill. "What are keepers?" "The texts are unclear, but they seem to be individuals chosen by the predecessors, marked by artifacts like the pillar. The keepers had special authority, special purposes." Zeke's paused. "The word used in the oldest texts translates roughly as those who balance the scales." "You mean judges?" "More than judges. The fragments suggest keepers could override local law. They answered to a higher authority, the predecessor's code of justice. Zeeks displayed an image of another artifact from a different world. It was a ring of stones with similar symbols. This was found on a dead world in the Outer Rim. The locals say their legends speak of a keeper who came during a war and stopped it. Sarah pressed her hand against the wall. You think that symbol above my head means I'm one of these keepers? I don't know. The title hasn't appeared in living memory. Most species think keepers are mythology, stories our ancestors told. Zix's colors shifted to something darker, but the artifact recognized you. It marked you. That's not mythology. That's real. So what does it mean? Sarah demanded. Does it mean I'm innocent? Does it mean I'm guilty? What? Different factions in the Concordat are arguing about exactly that, Zeke said. Some think the artifact marked you as a destroyer. Others think it marked you as someone important. The political situation is getting dangerous. Sarah laughed bitterly. More dangerous than a genocide trial? Yes. Because now they're not just judging you. They're judging what you represent. Zix moved closer to the barrier. Sarah, something else is happening to you. The medical scans show changes. Your brain activity is different. You're processing information faster. Your senses are sharper. Sarah had noticed. The guards outside her cell were having a conversation about her. They were 50 meters away and speaking quietly, but she could hear every word. She could smell their fear through the air filtration system. When the prosecutor had visited yesterday to gloat, she had known he was lying about his evidence before he finished speaking. Something about his body language and tone gave it away. I can sense things, Sarah admitted. It's like the world became more clear. I look at people, and I just know if they're telling the truth or not. That's impossible, Zeke said, but her tone suggested she believed it anyway. No species has that ability naturally. Even our best telepaths can't read lies that clearly. The artifact did something to me. Sarah looked at her hands. They looked normal, but they felt different, stronger. I can feel it in my head. Like something woke up that was always there. Before Zeeks could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. The guards outside Sarah's cell grabbed their weapons and looked around frantically. A voice boomed over the intercom. Security alert. Unknown vessels entering the system. Multiple jumps detected. All personnel to defensive positions. Zix's crystals went dark. Who is it? Sarah asked. I don't know. But the Concordat doesn't usually panic. Zix began gathering her tablets. I need to find out what's happening. Stay here. I'm in a cell, Sarah said dryly. I'm not going anywhere. Zix left. Sarah was alone again with the guards, who now looked more nervous than angry. She sat back on the uncomfortable bench and closed her eyes. That's when the vision started. She saw flashes of places she'd never been. A battle on a moon with purple sky. A marketplace where beings traded things that looked like compressed stars. A garden growing plants that sang. The images came faster and faster. Then she saw the Vexari planet. But this vision was different. This one felt real. Sarah watched through eyes that weren't hers. She was in a ship, but not her ship. The controls were alien. The crew around her spoke a language she didn't understand, but somehow she knew they were planning something terrible. The humans will take the blame, one said. Our weapon signatures are modified to match theirs. The Vexari world is rich in deuterium, another said. Once they're gone, we claim salvage rights. The Concordat will grant them to us as compensation for being in the same system during a human attack. Sarah watched in horror as the ship powered weapons. She watched as they fired on the helpless planet below. She watched as they killed billions and felt nothing but greed. Then she saw her own ship arrive. They had sent the distress call to lure her there. They wanted a witness. They wanted someone to blame. The vision ended. Sarah gasped and opened her eyes. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. "They framed me," she whispered. "They actually framed me. But who?" She hadn't seen faces clearly in the vision. Just fragments. A six-armed silhouette that might have been Kellen. Voices that sounded familiar, but she couldn't place. The artifact was showing her the truth. That's what keepers did. They saw through lies. Hours passed. The security alert continued. Sarah tried to meditate, tried to trigger more visions, but nothing came. The artifact's gift worked on its own schedule. Zix returned late that night. She looked shaken. The ships that arrived belonged to an organization we haven't heard from in centuries. They call themselves the Nullifiers. Never heard of them. No one has. They're like ghosts, ancient enemies of the predecessors. Zix displayed an image of ships that looked like they were made from broken space itself. They destroyed previous civilizations. Now they're here. Why? The pillar. The broadcast. When the artifact activated and marked you, it sent out a signal. The nullifiers detected it. Zix's colors showed pure fear. They're coming to destroy you, Sarah. They kill keepers. That's what they do. Sarah stood up. Then we need to tell the Concordat what I am. We need their help. They won't believe you. Half of them still think you're a genocidal killer. Then I'll make them believe. Sarah walked to the barrier. Zix. I had a vision. I saw what really happened at the Vexery world. Someone in the Concordat did it. Someone framed me. Zix went very still. That's a serious accusation. I know. But it's true. The artifact is showing me the truth. Sarah met Zix's alien gaze. You've been researching keepers. You found the old texts. Do they say what keepers could do? They could perceive truth. Zix said slowly. They could see past deception. They could demand justice, even from the powerful. Then I'm demanding it now. Sarah felt something shift inside her, the artifact's power responding to her will. I want to address the Concordat. I want to invoke whatever authority this mark gives me. That could start a civil war, or it could save lives. Sarah gestured at the ceiling. Those nullifiers are coming. If they destroy the station looking for me, everyone dies. Let me try to prevent that. Zix considered for a long moment. Then she nodded. There's something called the right of absolute review in the old texts. It allows a keeper to demand re-examination of any judgment. No one has invoked it in thousands of years. Most species think it's not real anymore. Make it real, Sarah said. Talk to the council. Tell them a marked keeper demands the right. Let's see if they dare refuse. Zix left again. Sarah waited. She felt the power in her blood now. The gift the artifact had awakened. She could sense lies on this entire station. She could feel injustice like a weight in her chest. The mark was changing her into what the predecessors had designed. 2 more days passed. The nullifier ships held position at the edge of the system, waiting. The Concordat scrambled their fleets, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Finally, Kellen came to her cell. His 6 arms were tense. His insect eyes showed anger and something else. Fear. You will get your review, he said. The council has agreed. Tomorrow, you will present your case. If you fail, if this is another human deception, we will execute you immediately. Keeper or not. I won't fail, Sarah said quietly. Kellen leaned closer to the barrier. I hope you're right, human, because if you're wrong, everyone on this station dies with you. He left. Sarah was alone again. She looked at her hands and saw them glowing faintly with the same blue light as the pillar. The artifact had marked her, changed her, made her into something humanity had been designed to become. She just hoped she was ready. The courtroom was packed. Every species in the Concordat had sent representatives. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of fear. All of them wanted to see what would happen when a human invoked ancient rights that shouldn't exist anymore. Sarah stood in the center again, but this time without chains. The artifact's pillar rose beside her, its symbols glowing steady and bright. Above her head, the keeper's mark still rotated slowly. Kellen sat on his throne. His 6 arms gripped the armrests tightly. The human Sarah Chen has invoked the right of absolute review. This is unprecedented in modern times. We do not know if such rights still apply. They apply, Sarah said. Her voice carried further than it should have. The artifact was amplifying her somehow. The predecessors built this place. Their laws are the foundation of everything you claim to believe in. Bold words from a killer, said one of the judges. I'm not a killer, Sarah replied calmly. And I can prove it. But first, you need to understand what I am. What humans are. She gestured to Zeke's, who activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the courtroom. Ancient texts, archaeological findings, fragments of predecessor records pieced together from a dozen different worlds. The predecessors didn't die, Zeke's explained. They evolved past physical form. But before they left, they seeded the galaxy with new species. Each one was given gifts. The Krill got telepathy. The Vortian got long life. The Metherians got technological intuition. This is known, Kellen interrupted. Ancient history. Then here's what you don't know, Sarah said. Humanity received a gift too. But it wasn't obvious like the others. It was buried deep in our psychology, in our emotions, in the way we think. She pulled up brain scans showing human neural patterns compared to other species. Look at this. Human brains process moral situations differently than any other known species. We have entire sections dedicated to fairness, justice, and empathy across species lines. We feel physical discomfort when we witness unfairness, even if it doesn't affect us. So humans are emotional and unstable, another judge said. This is not new information. It's not instability, Sarah countered. It's sophisticated moral processing. Humans were designed as a failsafe. We're keepers. All of us. We just didn't know it, until now. The courtroom erupted in noise. Species argued with each other. Some laughed. Others looked disturbed. Impossible, Kellen said. Keepers were individuals. Rare. Chosen by the artifacts. Not entire species. Previous keeper species were small populations, Zix said, reading from her research. The artifacts would mark 1 or 2 at a time. But they kept getting destroyed before they could spread. The predecessors learned from failure. They made humanity different. They made us numerous. They made us survivors. And they hid our purpose until we were strong enough. Sarah felt the truth of it in her bones. Everything about humanity made sense now. Their constant wars over principles. Their obsession with justice and rights. Their ability to empathize with beings completely unlike them. Their rage against unfairness. It wasn't random evolution. It was design. I had a vision, Sarah continued. The artifact showed me what happened at the Vexery world. I saw the real killers. She closed her eyes and let the vision come again. This time, the artifact projected it for everyone to see. The courtroom watched in silence as alien ships destroyed the Vexari planet. They heard the conversation about framing humans. They saw the greed and calculation. When the vision ended, chaos erupted again. This proves nothing, Kellen said, but his voice was less certain. Visions can be fabricated. Kellen, can they? Sarah pointed at the artifact. That pillar is older than any civilization in this room. It has access to security systems you don't even know exist. The predecessors built monitoring into the fabric of this station. Zix worked her controls. New images appeared. These were security recordings pulled from the artifact's memory banks. They showed the same ships from Sarah's vision. They showed dates and times that matched the Vexari attack. They showed those ships docked at Concordat stations, bearing official authorization codes. Those ships belonged to the inner circle, someone whispered. Sarah turned in a slow circle, looking at every face in the courtroom. Her keeper senses were active now, fully awake. She could feel lies like static electricity. She could sense guilt like heat. And she found what she was looking for. "High Arbiter Kellen," she said softly. "You knew." Kellen's mandibles clicked rapidly. "I knew nothing. You're lying." Sarah walked closer to his throne. "I can feel it. You were part of the conspiracy. You helped plan the genocide. You pushed for my trial because you needed a scapegoat. These are baseless accusations. Are they?" Sarah gestured at the artifact. "Should we ask the pillar to scan you? Should we see what truth it finds in your mind?" Kellen stood abruptly. His 6 arms reached for weapons that weren't there. "I am a high arbiter of the Concordat. You cannot accuse me without proof. I am a high arbiter. You cannot accuse me without proof." "I have proof," Sarah said. "The artifact has proof. The predecessors built systems to monitor for corruption, for injustice, and you tripped every alarm they left behind." Zix pulled up financial records. The artifact had accessed systems that should have been unhackable. Kellen received payments from resource corporations, the same corporations that now own rights to the Vexari system. He benefited from the genocide. 3 other judges stood quickly. They were part of it too. Sarah could feel their guilt like rot. "This is a human trick," one of them shouted. "She's using technology to deceive us." "Then, explain the artifact," Sarah challenged. "Explain why it marked me. Explain why it activated after 10,000 years of silence. Explain why it's showing you the truth you don't want to see." Security forces moved toward the guilty judges. Other judges, ones Sarah sensed, were innocent, called for their arrest. The courtroom divided. Some species backed the conspirators. Others backed Sarah. Ambassador Torres stood up. For the first time since the trial began, he looked at Sarah with something other than political calculation. He looked proud. "The human speaks truth," Torres said loudly. "Earth supports Keeper Chen's authority. We call for immediate investigation of all parties involved in the Vexari genocide. You're going to trust this?" Kellen's voice rose to a screech. "Humans are dangerous. They're violent. They're unpredictable." "Okay, they're violent. They're unpredictable. They're unpredictable. We're warriors," Sarah corrected. "We fight. Yes. But we fight for principles. Not conquest. That's the difference. That's why the predecessors chose us." She felt the power of the artifact flowing through her now. The mark on her hand burned bright. "I am Keeper Sarah Chen. I speak with the authority of the predecessor's law. The conspiracy is exposed. Justice will be served." The pillar responded to her declaration. Light burst from its peak, scanning the entire courtroom. Every being was examined. And above each guilty party's head, a dark symbol appeared. A mark of judgment. Kellen and the other conspirators tried to run. Security forces caught them. The evidence was overwhelming now. The artifact had recorded everything. Financial transactions, secret meetings, messages ordering the attack on the Vexari world. But as the arrests were made, alarms blared again. "The nullifiers are attacking!" someone shouted. The screens showed enemy ships advancing. They weren't waiting anymore. The artifact's full activation had drawn them in. They were coming to destroy the Keeper. Before she could become a threat, Sarah looked at the assembled species. "Now you see the bigger picture. The nullifiers want chaos. They want no law, no justice, no order. They destroyed previous Keeper civilizations because Keepers fight against that. They want to destroy humanity for the same reason. We don't have the forces to stop them," a military commander said. "Their ships are more advanced, their weapons are stronger. Then we use what humanity does best, Sarah said. She turned to Torres. Ambassador, contact Earth. Contact the human fleets. Tell them a keeper calls for aid. Torres nodded and began transmitting immediately. Sarah addressed the Concordat again. The predecessors didn't make humans to rule you. They made us to protect the idea of justice. Right now, justice means defending this station against beings who want to destroy everything you've built. She pointed at the screens showing approaching enemy ships. You can keep arguing about whether humans are too violent, or too emotional, or too strange. Or you can accept that sometimes violence is necessary. Sometimes emotion drives us to do what's right. Sometimes being strange means seeing solutions others miss. Zeeks floated beside her. What's your plan? We defend, Sarah said simply, and we show them what keepers were made to do. The artifact's pillar pulsed brighter. Sarah felt knowledge flowing into her mind. Battle tactics, strategies. The predecessors had left instructions for moments like this. Keepers weren't just judges. They were protectors. She began issuing orders. Her military training, combined with the artifact's knowledge, she coordinated Concordat forces with an efficiency that surprised everyone. Ships moved into defensive formations. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. But there was something else. Sarah felt it building. The artifact was preparing something. What are those? Someone asked, pointing at the pillar. Glowing panels were sliding open along the artifact's surface. Inside each panel was a weapon system that had been dormant for 10,000 years. The predecessors had built defenses into the station itself. The artifact responds to keeper authority, Zeke said with wonder. Sarah, you can control the ancient defenses. Sarah reached out with her mind. She felt the weapon systems wake up at her touch. They were powerful enough to make the nullifiers think twice. But power without wisdom was tyranny. That was the test. That was what separated keepers from conquerors. Broadcast on all channels, Sarah ordered, to the nullifier fleet. When the channel opened, she spoke clearly. This is Keeper Sarah Chen. You're attacking a civilization under predecessor protection. Turn back now, or face the consequences. The response came quickly. Keepers are weak. You try to impose order on chaos. We are the truth of the universe. There is no justice. Only power. Flow. Let's peace. Let's mon. You're wrong, Sarah said. Justice isn't about control. It's about protecting the vulnerable from the strong. It's about making sure power is used wisely. That's why you're afraid of us. We fear nothing. Then prove it. Face us. The nullifier ships opened fire. Energy weapons capable of destroying planets lanced toward the station. But Sarah was ready. The artifact's defenses activated. Shields of pure energy absorbed the blasts. Counter-weapons fired back with precision. The battle had begun. And Sarah Chen stood at the center of it. Marked by ancient law. Defender of a justice older than any civilization in the galaxy. But this was just the beginning. The real test was still to come. The battle raged around the station. Nullifier ships fired their reality-warping weapons, while Concordat forces struggled to hold formation. Sarah stood in the command center, her mind linked to the artifact's ancient systems. She could see every ship, feel every weapon discharge, sense every strategy shift. It was overwhelming and perfect at the same time. Enemy formation breaking into attack wings, a tactical officer reported. The officer was a krill, with gray skin and multifaceted eyes. They're trying to flank us. Sarah saw it before the sensors did. The nullifiers were predictable once you understood their philosophy. They believed in chaos, but that belief created its own pattern. They would always choose the most destructive option. Move the defense platforms to coordinates 7-7 Alpha, she ordered. They'll try to hit the civilian sections next. We'll be waiting. The platforms moved. 30 seconds later, nullifier fighters appeared exactly where Sarah predicted. The defense weapons caught them in a crossfire. 3 enemy ships exploded. The others retreated. "How did you know?" the Krill officer asked. "They think destruction is freedom," Sarah explained. "So they target the most vulnerable. It makes them predictable." Zeeks worked at a nearby console, coordinating shield rotations. "The human fleets are still 3 hours away. Can we hold that long?" "9." Sarah checked the battle readouts. The Concordate forces were taking casualties. Ships exploded in flowers of fire. Good people were dying. She felt each loss like a physical blow. That was the Keeper curse. She couldn't stop feeling, couldn't stop caring. "We'll hold," she said with more confidence than she felt. But the real battle wasn't in space. It was happening in the halls of the station itself. Kellen and the other conspirators had been arrested, but their supporters were causing trouble. Some security forces loyal to the old regime tried to reach the artifact, planning to destroy it. Others attempted to sabotage the defense systems. Sarah had to split her attention. Fighting in space, fighting internal threats. Trying to hold everything together while the station shook from weapons impacts. "Keeper Chen," a voice called over the comm. It was Torres. "We have a situation in Section 9. Armed insurgents, trying to reach your location. Can station security handle it?" "They're trying, but these insurgents have military-grade weapons. Someone's been planning this." Sarah made a decision. "I'm sending you coordinates. Fall back to those positions. I'll activate the predecessor security systems." She reached into the artifact's network and found dormant defense protocols. The station was more than a meeting place. It was a fortress. The predecessors had built protection into every wall, every corridor. Sarah activated the ancient systems. In Section 9, hidden panels opened. Security drones that looked like floating spheres emerged. They were 10,000 years old, but still functional. They moved to intercept the insurgents with weapons that hummed with contained energy. The insurgents didn't stand a chance. The drones were built by a civilization that mastered warfare and then chose peace. They were overwhelmingly effective, but Sarah felt sick watching it happen through the security feeds. More death. More violence. She was a keeper, meant to protect justice. But justice sometimes required force. That was the burden. "The insurgents are neutralized," Torres reported. "Sarah, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she lied. In the command center, alarms blared. A massive nullifier warship was moving toward the station. It was bigger than anything else in their fleet. Sensors showed it charging a weapon that could crack a planet. "That's their command ship," the Krill officer said. His voice shook with fear. "If they fire that cannon, the station is finished." Sarah studied the tactical display. The command ship was heavily shielded. Concordate weapons barely scratched it. The artifact's defenses were powerful, but that ship was built to kill predecessors. She needed a different approach. "Open a channel to the nullifier command ship," Sarah ordered. "Are you insane?" someone asked. "Maybe. Open the channel." The screen flickered. A being appeared. It was hard to look at directly. Its form seemed to shift, like reality couldn't quite hold it in place. This was a nullifier commander. Something that had existed for thousands of years. "Little Keeper," the nullifier said. Its voice sounded like grinding glass. "You delay the inevitable. We killed your predecessors. We'll kill you." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why do you hate Keepers so much?" "Because you impose order on chaos. You claim justice exists. You're wrong. The universe is random, meaningless. We embrace that truth. You deny it." "No," Sarah said. "We acknowledge the chaos, but we choose to create meaning anyway. That's the difference between us." The nullifier laughed. "Philosophy won't stop my canon." "You're right. But understanding might." Sarah leaned forward. "You say justice is an illusion, but you're organized. You have ranks, rules, Strategies. You're not as chaotic as you claim. We are efficient in our destruction. Exactly. You impose your own order. You just call it something else. Sarah gestured at the battle around them. You want to destroy us because we represent everything you've spent millennia denying. That you need structure. That you need purpose. That pure chaos would consume you too. The nullifier's form flickered with anger. You know nothing. I know you're afraid, Sarah said. The predecessors became something beyond physical form. They evolved past the need for law or justice because they transcended the conditions that required it. You're stuck. You can't evolve. You can't change. So you destroy what reminds you of your failure. Enough. The nullifier's image distorted. Your words are meaningless. You die now. The channel cut off. The command ship's cannon finished charging. Sarah had one chance. She reached deep into the artifact's systems, deeper than she'd gone before. She found weapon systems that even the predecessors hesitated to use. Weapons that could unmake matter. Destroy enemy ships so completely they'd never have existed. It would be easy. One command. The nullifier command ship would cease to be. Thousands of enemies dead. The station saved. But that wasn't justice. That was revenge. That was doing what the nullifiers expected. Keepers were supposed to be different. Sarah made a choice. Instead of weapons, she activated the artifact's historical databases. She broadcast directly to every ship in the nullifier fleet. Not to the commanders. To the crew. She showed them the truth about their own history. The nullifiers hadn't always been destroyers. The predecessors' records showed that. Millennia ago, they were refugees fleeing oppressive empires. They'd been hurt by unjust laws and corrupt powers. They'd become rebels, then extremists, then something worse. They weren't evil. They were traumatized. Sarah broadcast the full history. She showed nullifier crew members what their ancestors had been. She showed them the pain that created their philosophy, and she showed them that the Concordat wasn't like the empires that hurt them. You're not fighting oppression. Sarah's voice carried to every ship. You're fighting the idea that things can be better. That justice can be real. That wounds can heal. The command ship fired its cannon. Sarah braced for impact. But the blast never came. On the nullifier command ship, the crew had mutinied. They'd turned weapons on their own commanders. The cannon blast went wide, missing the station by kilometers. Other nullifier ships stopped firing. Confusion spread through their fleet. The broadcast had reached them. Some crews shut down their weapons. Others began arguing among themselves. A few ships even broke formation and retreated. The nullifier fleet was fracturing. Now, Sarah ordered the Concordat forces. Target the command ship's engines. Disable. Don't destroy. The combined firepower of the defense fleet struck precisely. The nullifier command ship went dark, drifting powerless. Its crew was already fighting internally. The battle was over. Not through overwhelming force. Through truth. Sarah collapsed into a chair, her head pounded, her body ached. Linking with the artifact took enormous energy. But they'd won. Torres appeared on the comm screen. He was smiling for the first time in weeks. Sarah, the human fleet's just arrived. But it looks like you didn't need us after all. I always needed you, Sarah said. All of you. This wasn't just my victory. It was everyone's. Zeke's floated beside her. The Concordat Council wants to speak with you. Officially. Sarah stood up, straightening her uniform. Let's go face the music. The courtroom was different this time. Kellon's throne sat empty. The judges, who'd conspired with him, were in detention. New representatives had taken their places. A Vortian elder spoke first. Her species lived for centuries and had long memories. Keeper Chen, the evidence against High Arbiter Kellon and his co-conspirators is overwhelming. They will face justice for the Vexari genocide. On behalf of the Concordat, I apologize for the injustice done to you. Apology accepted, Sarah said. But I need something more than words. Name it. Reform. The corruption went deep. You need transparency. Oversight. Systems to prevent this from happening again. Sarah looked around the courtroom. And you need to stop treating humans like we're monsters. We're not. We're keepers. We're here to help. Another judge spoke. How can we trust that humans won't abuse this power? You control ancient weapons. You command authority older than our civilizations. Because that's not what keepers do, Sarah replied. We don't rule. We don't conquer. We remind you of your better nature. When you stray from justice, we bring you back. That's all. And if we refuse your authority? Sarah smiled tiredly. Then I go home to Earth. I train other keepers. And we live our lives. We don't force ourselves on anyone. But when injustice happens, when the vulnerable are threatened, we'll be there. Whether you like it or not. The courtroom was silent for a long moment. Finally, the Vortian elder nodded. Then, let it be recorded. Keeper Sarah Chen is officially recognized by the Concordat. Her authority is acknowledged, and humanity is welcomed as Keeper Guardians. Cheers erupted from some species. Others grumbled. But the decision was made. Sarah was free. Humanity was safe. And the galaxy had just learned that Keepers weren't mythology anymore. They were very, very real. 3 months after the battle, Sarah stood on Earth's surface for the first time since her arrest. The air smelled like home. Rain fell lightly on the forest outside the new Keeper Academy, and she breathed it in deeply. Still getting used to it? Torres asked. He walked beside her on the path between buildings. The ambassador had become her friend through the ordeal. Being home, or being the first officially recognized keeper in 10,000 years. Sarah smiled. Both, I guess. The academy was built in northern Canada, far from major cities. The Concordat had helped fund it as part of their apology. It was a place to train humans who showed keeper potential, to teach them how to use their gifts wisely. 50 students were enrolled in the first class. Men and women from different countries, different backgrounds. All of them had that same quality Sarah had always felt but never understood. That burning need for fairness. That inability to ignore injustice. How are they doing? Torres asked. Better than expected. Once we explained what they were feeling, it all made sense to them. They're not broken. They're not too sensitive. They're keepers. Sarah watched through the window as students practiced meditation techniques, learning to sense truth the way she did. Not all humans were keepers. The artifact could only mark those with the right neural patterns. But there were millions with the potential. Maybe tens of millions. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was just beginning to wake up. Zeeks appeared in the doorway, her crystalline body reflecting the gray daylight. Sarah? There's a situation. The Concordat Council is calling an emergency session. Sarah's expression turned serious. What happened? Border dispute in the outer sectors. 2 species claiming the same system. It's getting violent. They're requesting keeper mediation. Ababan. 1Ks. Aban. 1Ks see you done. Border dispute in the outer sectors. This was the new reality. Sarah had become more than a symbol. She was actively working as a keeper now. Traveling to conflict zones. Investigating injustices. Using the artifact's authority to prevent wars before they started. It was exhausting. But it was right. Tell them I'll be there in 6 hours, Sarah said. She turned to Torres. Sorry, duty calls. I understand. But Sarah, before you go, there's someone who wants to meet you. Torres led her to a private meeting room. Inside waited a Vexari. Sarah recognized the species immediately. Her heart clenched. This was Kresh, the survivor who had testified against her at the trial. Kresh's feathers were no longer black with grief. They showed colors of healing now. blue, and green, mixed with yellow. Keeper Chen, Kresh said formally. I came to apologize. You don't need to apologize, Sarah said gently. You believed what you were told. They manipulated you. I called you a murderer. I wanted you dead. Kresh's voice trembled. And all the time, you were trying to save us. You were framed by the same beings who killed my family. Sarah sat down across from Kresh. Your pain was real. Your loss was real. You had every right to be angry. But not at you. Kresh reached out with one of its 4 arms. Kellen has been sentenced. The conspirators will spend their lives in prison. Justice was done because of you. My people wanted you to know we're grateful. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Kresh asked, What is it like? Being a keeper? Sarah thought about the question. It's like being unable to look away from suffering. I feel injustice, happening even light years away. It calls to me. And I have to answer. That sounds like a burden. It is. But it's also a privilege. Sarah looked at the keeper's mark on her hand. It glowed faintly even now. Someone has to care about what's right. Someone has to stand up for those who can't protect themselves. The predecessors chose humans for that role. I'm trying to be worthy of it. Kresh stood to leave. Then I hope you succeed. The galaxy needs keepers. We need beings who care more about justice than power. After Kresh left, Sarah prepared for the journey to the outer sectors. She packed light, changed into the new uniform that marked her as a keeper. Dark blue, with the ancient symbol on the shoulder. Her ship was waiting at the spaceport. It was a gift from the Concordat. Small but fast, with technology that was a mix of human engineering and predecessor designs. The artifact had shared some of its knowledge, allowing humanity to build better ships. As Sarah walked to the landing pad, her comm device buzzed. A message from one of her students, Keeper Chen. I sensed something today during meditation. A crime happening in the city. I felt it like you described. What should I do? I weigh. My tan. Sarah smiled and recorded a reply. Trust your instincts. Investigate carefully. Remember, keepers don't replace local law. We support it. If you find injustice, report it to authorities. Only intervene directly if lives are in danger, and there's no other option. This was the future. Keepers spread across human space, eventually across the whole galaxy, not as rulers, but as guardians. As reminders of what civilization was supposed to be, Sarah's ship lifted off. As Earth fell away beneath her, she thought about everything that had changed. The nullifiers were scattered. Most of their forces had surrendered after the command ship fell. Some fled to the far reaches of space, but their power was broken. Centuries of terror ended because someone showed them truth instead of violence. The Concordat was reforming. New oversight systems were in place. Transparency laws required public records of all council decisions. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And humanity had found its purpose. For 70 years, humans had wondered what role they'd play among the stars. Now, they knew. They were the conscience of civilization, the voice that asked, but is this right? In every important decision, the journey to the outer sectors took 3 days at faster than light speeds. 2 species called the Threll and the Mekara both claimed a system with rare minerals. Both had legitimate historical claims. Both were preparing for war. When Sarah arrived, she didn't bring weapons or threats. She brought questions. She met with Threll leaders and asked, "What do you really need? Is it the minerals? Or is it recognition of your rights?" She met with Mekara representatives and asked, "Would you accept a compromise if it meant no one died?" She spent a week going between both sides. Listening more than talking. Sensing when they lied about their true concerns. Gently pointing out when pride mattered more than practical needs. Finally, she proposed a solution. The system would be jointly administered. Both species would mine different sections. Profits would be shared. A neutral keeper station would monitor compliance. Neither side loved the solution, but both could live with it. And that was enough. The war was prevented. Lives were saved. Justice was served. This became Sarah's pattern. Traveling from crisis to crisis. Sometimes preventing wars. Sometimes investigating crimes. Sometimes just being present to remind people that someone was watching. Someone who cared about doing the right thing. She wasn't alone for long. Other keepers graduated from the academy. They spread across human space and beyond. Each one a guardian. Each one a reminder. The galaxy changed slowly. But it changed. A year after her trial, Sarah returned to the Concordat station, where it all began. The pillar still stood in the courtroom, glowing softly. She placed her hand on its surface and felt the consciousness within respond. "Thank you," she whispered to the ancient artifact, "for showing me what I was meant to be." The pillar pulsed once in acknowledgement, then showed her a vision. She saw the future. Not a perfect galaxy. There was still conflict, still injustice, still suffering. But threading through it all were the keepers, humans who stood against darkness, who demanded better, who reminded everyone that justice wasn't just an idea. It was a choice, made every day, by every person. She saw generations of keepers, centuries of humans serving as guardians, and slowly, gradually, the galaxy becoming a more just place because someone cared enough to make it so. The vision faded. Sarah opened her eyes. Zeeks was waiting nearby. "Are you okay?" "Better than okay," Sarah said. "I just saw what we're building. It's going to work, Zeeks. Not perfectly, but it's going to work." They walked through the station together. Sarah noticed the changes. Species that used to avoid each other now worked side by side. The Vexari had returned to Concordat space, rebuilding with support from other civilizations. Even some reformed nullifiers were integrating, learning that structure didn't have to mean oppression. In a plaza near the docking bays, Sarah saw something that made her stop. A statue had been erected. It showed a human figure with a keeper's mark glowing on their hand. The plaque beneath read, "They declared the human guilty until the artifact identified them, marked forever as the keeper of justice." "Who authorized that?" Sarah asked. "The Concordat Council," Zix replied. "They wanted a reminder of what happened here, of what keepers represent." Sarah stared at the statue. It was idealized, heroic. She didn't feel like that person. She felt tired and uncertain most days. But maybe that was the point. Keepers weren't perfect. They were just people who kept trying. Her comm device buzzed. Another crisis. Another call for help. Another chance to make things right. Sarah smiled and started walking toward her ship. "Come on, Zix. Work never ends." "That's the Keeper curse," Zeke said, floating beside her. "No," Sarah corrected. "That's the Keeper purpose." As her ship lifted off from the station, Sarah looked back at the massive structure. The pillar's light was visible even from space, a beacon that had waited 10,000 years to activate. It had chosen well. Not just her, but all of humanity. A species passionate about fairness, emotional about injustice, aggressive in defense of the vulnerable. Everything the galaxy had seen as flaws were actually strengths. Humanity wasn't perfect, but they were perfectly suited for this role. Sarah set course for the next crisis, the next chance to prevent suffering, the next opportunity to uphold justice. The Keeper's mark on her hand glowed bright, not with power, but with purpose. And across the galaxy, millions of humans felt that same call in their hearts, that same burning need to make things right. The predecessors had seeded that gift long ago. Now, it was finally bearing fruit. The galaxy had its guardians, its conscience, its keepers, and they would never stop fighting for justice. Not because they had to, but because they couldn't imagine doing anything else. That was the human gift. That was the keeper way. To care, to act, to make things better, every single day, forever.